Well, children, that's all I'm reading from that book. Now I'm going to read you this story. It's called MTV and the Cult of the Body. This is sort of based around a televised plane wreck, not the most recent one, but another one which was equally orgasmic. And it has to do with this emergency crew worker who is there cleaning up the gore, and he's an obsessed fan of the most famous woman in the world who happens to have been on the plane, and he finds that his wildest fantasies are realized when they are able to get together. So, this first section is called "She Falls from the Sky and is Resurrected in the Woods." Shredded and scattered by the explosion, their bodies hang in limp strips from the trees, like deliquescing over ripe fruit. Skewered on a thorny branch, a child's hand points an accusing finger at the sky, drawing our eyes up to the exact location in the blue where the mayhem was born, an erupting orchid of flames that blasted through the delicate parchment of the air and showered the forest below with a lumbering rain of flesh, melting plastic, and steel. Cutting our way through the brush, we're the first members of the emergency crew to arrive. Brightly clad in our yellow rubber suits and matching air-filtered hoods, we work our way silently towards the garden of whispering gore, like an advancing troop of carnivorous aliens drawn in by the scent of burning plastic and roasted organs. Inside their masks, my fellow workers chant a mournful elegy, as if they could sanctify their own complicity in this meaningless and degrading spectacle with the blunt stupidity of their words. There aren't any faces. There aren't any faces. They don't have any faces. They intone dully, weeping like children inside their rubber hoods. Or are they really just grieving their own selfish loss? The essential secrets they had expected to divine in the oracle of a tortured and disfigured face, now denied them, unjustly stolen by the flames. We fan out in the carnage, stooping and picking our way through the rubbish and meat, like a flock of phosphorescent monks, tending our fertile crop of tropical monstrosities, nurturing the vegetal suffering contained in our harvest of dead things. As we work, the heat becomes unbearable, and we remove our masks. Quickly, we become drunk on the heavy burgundy mist that floats just above the blood-soaked soil, enriched with the contrasting sour and sweet flavors of jet fuel and offal. We draw these vapors up from the ground and down into our lungs in long, twisting, furry strands, as rich and intoxicating as opium smoke, exhaling and then inhaling them again in a continuous symbiotic exchange between our insides and the piles of corruption through which we wade. In this way, the narcotic poisons that leak out from inside the mulch of viscera infect the interior membranes of our own bodies. The tension and energy stored in our muscles, straining in the heat as we work, is loosened and corroded by this perfume as it spreads through our nervous systems. Our fingers become dull and lifeless, trapped in their clumsy, oversized rubber gloves. Gradually, even the inner surface of our eyes is stained translucent red. The dew-slicked, vivid greens of the grass and foliage now glow crimson instead, bleeding with the oversaturated pigments of a negative color film. Just up ahead in the clearing, the lingering red smoke is sucked into a sinuating column of light that lifts up in a pillar to the forest ceiling, expands out in the shape of a mushroom, then sifts back down to us through the leaves, like blood filtering into the inert water of a tropical aquarium bowl. An insensible congregation of unmatched arms and legs encircles the clearing from above, suspended from the branches of the trees, rocking ponderously, as if each dead extremity were struggling separately to remember the mechanics of its movements from its former life. After mapping out the perimeters of the disaster with a jagging line of pink day-glow twine, we begin our job of meticulously gathering body parts from the underbrush and trees. As if we were an itinerant tribe of butchers offering up our goods to the local inhabitants of the forest, we lay our produce out in neat rows on shiny black plastic sheets spread out in the sunlight of the clearing. Each sheet is the exclusive domain of limbs, organs, or heads. As we search the area, we leave a small red flag wherever we find a treasure, along with an attached, scrawled note describing its original placement at the site and its possible function in the human body. The chunks of matter that are beyond recognition are tossed into bright blue plastic 5-gallon buckets that quickly overflow with slime like pig slop waiting to be flung. Eventually, the entire area is peppered with these red identification flags, and it resembles the artificial tableau of a miniature golf course, the primary thematic attraction being our colorful display of emergency crew paraphernalia and meat. Finally, as it becomes obvious to me that the others are hypnotized by the monotony of their work, I'm able to wander off beyond the perimeter without being noticed. Inside my mind, I'm tuned to an invisible psychic thread, and it leads me steadily through the clinging and impenetrable fabric of sweating vegetation. I follow this sensation with a joy that glows like an ember in my loins, leading me on to the holy body of my goddess, who's waiting just for me, resting from her fall. It's inconceivable to me that she would allow her perfectly sculpted, athletic body to fall among the common heap of the other passengers, even if mutilated by the violence of the explosion. So, I'm not surprised when I find her lying peacefully in a bed of thistles and moss, perfectly intact, naked. Her shaved pubis shines like a milky stone. The pink dolphin lips of her vagina smile enigmatically, the glistening fold parted just slightly, calling me in to the velvet corridor that leads to the pleasures of heaven and hell. The face I've seen so many times, bathed in the nacreous light of stardom on MTV, looks exactly as it has always appeared in her videos, flawlessly white, seductive, as forgiving and maternal as the Mother of God, and wise as only the most famous media stars can be in the secrets of transcendent sexual agony and bliss. Her eyes are fluorescent green, sparkling with yellow chips, like the eyes of a leopard, the ultra-modern contact lens gloss, no more or less opaque and inscrutable in death than in her most recent video. I've always known that we'd meet someday, that if I kept her in my mind at all times, our lives would finally intersect. So when I saw her name among the list of passengers, the certainty that our moment had arrived welled up inside of me, a religious joy of faith confirmed. Now, she lies here at my feet, calling me. It's no coincidence that her body is unharmed. She's impervious to decay, to uncertainty, or fear. I cup my hands around my eyes, so it looks like I'm peering out from inside a cave onto the magical, secret, vernal retreat of my goddess. She holds a lantern in her left hand, slightly raised up from her bed of leaves. Her pink flesh is radiant against the earth tones of the forest floor. A glittering constellation of diamonds, pearls, and ornate gold and silver jewel-studded bracelets and tiaras is scattered around her where she lays. The lantern pulses with the beating of her heart. She's looking directly at me, beckoning me, as if I were a slowly circling video camera. She opens her legs matter-of-factly, her left knee hitched back up towards the lantern, the other leg disappearing down among the detritus of the forest floor. Lovingly, I reach down for her, awkward in my yellow rubber suit, and I lift her up into my arms. Her body generates a superhuman warmth that instantly penetrates my rubber suit, as if the warmth itself is a form of communication. As I carry her off deeper into the woods, she sings softly into my ear. I know your secrets. I know your secrets. I know your secrets. Circling the cartilage of my ear gently with her tongue. I'm infused with her holiness. We travel through the forest as if floating in a current of warm red fluid. Her lantern lights the way. Her tongue penetrates deeper into my skull. I feel her tender voice sucking at the delicate hidden places in my mind. As we walk, I reach down and I feed softly at her breast, drawing a steady flow of honey milk into my mouth. Eventually, she signals with the lantern to lay her down. I remove my rubber suit, and as we make love, I feel my body fulgurating with light. Multicolored pictures projected from inside flash across the screen of our naked, single skin. When I'm finished with her, I bury her body beneath a tree, spreading out the leaves and moss so the area appears undisturbed. I know that I'll find her easily when I return, because I alone can see the dirt just faintly glowing from underneath. This next section is called The Media Want to Know. As reinforcements arrive, each crew rotates in 3-hour shifts, further endurance having been proved impossible. One stunned emergency crew chief likens the site inside the perimeter to a fucking garden of living gore. So, in our off hours, we haunt the coffee shops of the nearby town. There aren't any faces. There aren't any faces. They don't have any faces. We reply in monotones into our coffee as the locals and then the media gather at our shoulders, feeding on the atmosphere of shell-shocked reverie that shimmers around us in a halo. We are the exhausted professionals, prophets returned from the crucible of an unimaginably malevolent wilderness. As we turn and stand facing the video cameras, our eyes glaze over. We're instantly sucked into the wet vortex of the expanding and contracting video lens. Like patients confessing a childhood trauma to an impassive therapist, We heave and we blubber for the camera, unashamedly. The video teams hover. Their cameras wheeze as they focus in on our tears, like giant-headed insects drawn toward us by the sugary scent of the dripping nectar that squeezes out from the corners of our eyes. There aren't any faces. There aren't any faces. We repeat for anyone who will listen. And at first, this macabre chorus is enough to slake their thirst, until they receive a copy of the passenger list, and they learn that Angelica was on board. And then, without wanting to seem too especially interested in the star and her famously perfect body, now presumably a shredded corpse, the questions begin to focus in on just that. Did anybody find a piece of something that could possibly be her? Her hand, her delicate foot, the one that cruel-looking Spaniard sucked in the video for Pacify My Love. A few pieces of La Perle lingerie strewn among the wreckage. A strand of her platinum hair dangling from a weed. But I've cleaned up any evidence of her presence, and I can hear her singing to me now. Our life together is only just beginning. And now a final section of this fairy tale. And it's called, Her Love is Shared Throughout the World. Now, I'm lying fully clothed on the bright orange synthetic bedspread in my budget hotel room, where I have been sent to rest before returning to the scene of the disaster in a few hours. My clothes are heavy with sweat, and even though they were protected inside the supposedly hermetic environment of my yellow rubber suit, the steam that lifts up from them now as they dry in the forced chill of the roaring air conditioner is slightly pungent with the aftertaste of slaughter. This smell mixes with the honey-flavored musk of Angelica's sex that rises from my crotch into the cool air of the room. Looking around me as I rest, it gradually dawns on me that the materials from which my room are constructed are identical to the prefabricated synthetics I've just seen twisted and melted and flung in shards around the forest. The orange multi-plastic woven fiber of the bedspread and carpet, the stippled beige plastic chair with shiny steel legs, the chrome desk lamp with its faux leather shade, the imitation bronze door handles and fixtures, the plexiglass finish of my bedside table, the tensile steel of the adjustable, wall-mounted television apparatus. Watching the images move now inside the television screen, I consume beer after beer, drawn from the portable cooler beside my bed. The alcohol sharpens rather than dulls my senses, clearing away the mucus coating of misery that normally clouds my perceptions. Gradually, I notice that the room is trembling with increasing intensity as I watch the screen, as if the surfaces of the rectangle that encloses me are straining with an impossible tension that will soon rupture, then regurgitate in an all-consuming fireball of chemical vengeance. But rather than let it release, I pull this tension back into myself. My body is a magnet that sucks in the violence that surrounds it in the world. The destructive energy that animates everything around me is wound into a tight coil inside my stomach, and it feeds me with hidden strength. A thick-lidded, medicated television network news anchorman, whom I remember from my childhood as a figure of equal stature to a president or an idealized television father, now looms in the screen before the backdrop of the airplane wreckage. The grimly silent emergency crew stoops and picks dejectedly through the rubble behind him, like a labor gang of defeated slaves, pressed into service in the flesh orchard of their sadistic lord. The artificially cheerful colors of their emergency crew suits and equipment give the scene an incongruously festive air. The television anchorman has flown in especially from New York City to report personally on this awesomely destructive disaster, a particularly gruesome example in a recent spate of devastating airplane crashes across the nation. He's dressed in starched field khakis, and he conveys urgency by delivering his report in a near whisper, his voice rasping with barely controlled emotion. His eyes shine with tears, telegraphing the received light of our shared carnage. A warm, gestating arousal grows between my legs as I realize that every viewer in America is connected to me through the animating light inside the screen, a thread of luminous blood that flows out from the mangled bodies of the victims and into a vast network web that ultimately feeds into our thirsty veins, nourishing our parched brains with the rich food of mayhem and violence. Drunk with ecstasy, I soon pass out on the bed. When I wake up, I don't know how much time has passed. If anything, my drunkenness has intensified, and my arousal is unbearable, straining in the darkness between my legs. The television extends out from the wall on its metal, levered arm, and it hovers and sways above my bed, as if the television set itself is the head of an electric snake struggling wildly to free its body from its tether on the wall. The channel is now tuned to MTV. The sound is muted. She looks down at me from the screen, smiling just for me. Her glossy red lips are parted, fuming with light. Her face is the face of a risen saint. It generates an orb of light, like the phosphorescent plasma of a star, a light that includes us all, that bathes each one of us in its eternal sexual forgiveness. The moist, mirror-red interior of her mouth breathes out a soothing stream of sighs that gently pulls us into her. The membranes of her lips are the pristine, perfumed, cherry-red lips of a vulvic goddess, ushering us into the protection of her womb, folding us up in omniscient blue light, forever inside of her. As she sings and dances for me in the screen, I connect my mind to her image like a leech. I enclose her head inside my toothless leech mouth, and I suck the light from inside her skull, filling my belly up with her warm star essence. We turn to glittering jelly in each other's arms. Lost in the heaven of my television world, I hear a crash through the wall, coming from the room next door. Then a muffled scream. Then another crash, louder and more violent this time. After a pause of silence, the soundtrack to her video, the one I've been watching in my room, comes up loud in the room next door. Then the grind of a bed against the wall, rising in volume with the rhythm of the music. More moans now, in apparent agony. Then, glass breaking against the wall. And finally, building with a force that seems to scream up and out from the center of my own stomach, a murderous voice, out of control. Ah, ah. As he stabs himself deeper and deeper into his lover, in time with the relentless cadence of her song.